What if I told you that the fate of a billion-dollar company rested not in the hands of a seasoned executive, but in the courage of a 16-year-old girl with a borrowed janitor badge? In a world where power wears suits and justice hides in the shadows, one young voice dared to speak up. She wasn't invited into the boardroom. She fought her way in. And what she revealed didn't just change a contract. It rewrote the rules of the game. This isn't just another corporate scandal. This is the story of how truth found its way through lies, and how the smallest voice became the loudest call for justice. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you stunned. "Excuse me, but this clause is a trap," the black girl said, and the CEO's smile instantly faded. "This clause, it flips the liability. If you sign this, sir, your company takes the fall." The words struck the boardroom like a thunderclap, echoing off the sleek glass walls, leaving a silence so thick it seemed to hang in the air like a suspended hammer. Standing at the glass doorway of the 27th floor conference room was a 16-year-old girl, Maya Williams. She wore borrowed sneakers and a janitor's badge, her presence an anomaly in this world of tailored suits and polished briefcases. She pointed directly at the contract that Dwayne Johnson, the CEO, was moments from signing. His pen hovered mid-air, silver brows furrowed. His wife, Clara, blinked sharply, her fingers tightening on the armrest. Derek Vaughn, the slick Texan businessman with a practiced smile, let out an awkward, dismissive chuckle. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice too calm, too smooth. "I read that clause on page 14, Maya continued, her voice clear, but carrying the weight of urgency. "It shifts all merger-related liabilities to your company, sir. If anything goes wrong after the merger, fraud, lawsuits, defaults, you take the full hit. Vaughn's firm walks away clean." The young executives, seated around the long glass table, exchanged uneasy glances. One man pulled the document closer, flipping rapidly to the reference page. Another tapped furiously at a tablet, scrolling through legal jargon. Clara leaned forward, her voice a low, sharp whisper. "She shouldn't even be here. She's the janitor's daughter," someone murmured, just loud enough to carry. But Maya didn't flinch. Just 8 hours earlier, her world had been simple, routine even. The cleaning crew at Hale Investments moved like quiet clockwork, pushing carts and polishing glass long after the offices emptied. Maya, dressed in a faded hoodie and wearing a visitor maintenance lanyard, sorted shredded files and wiped down glass doors while her mother vacuumed a hallway nearby. It was just another night until she noticed the folder left on the copier tray, its stamped cover marked "Final Draft, Merger Agreement." Something about it tugged at her instincts. Unlike most kids her age, Maya didn't spend her evenings scrolling through endless social media feeds. She devoured business documentaries with her grandfather and once wrote a school essay on how Enron collapsed. Opening the folder, her eyes scanned lines of complex legalese until they locked on a particular clause buried deep within the document. Sub-paragraph. See line 3 of the liability section. It was subtle but clear. A reversal of responsibility. If the deal collapsed, if legal trouble surfaced, Hale Investments, Dwayne Johnson's company, would be left to shoulder the entire fallout, while Vaughn Global would escape unscathed. It was a trap. "Mom," Maya had whispered, rushing down the hallway. "Have you ever seen a contract that hands over an entire company like this?" Denise, her mother, barely glanced up from polishing a glass wall. "Maya, stop it. Don't mess with their stuff. You want to get us both fired." Maya fell silent, but her mind raced. Now, in the present, the room was frozen. Clara's hand tightened around the armrest. Van's smirk faltered, and Dwayne Johnson stared hard at Maya. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his pen. "You say that clause flips liability?" he asked, his voice carefully even. "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "It's disguised in legal language, but if your team didn't read every line, it's meant to confuse. It doesn't protect your company. It sets it up to take the fall." Clara's voice cracked. "Dwayne, this is nonsense. She's a child." But Dwayne's focus didn't waver. His gaze dropped to the contract. He flipped to page 14, his eyes scanning the fine print, his jaw tightening. Derek leaned forward, trying to dismiss her with a condescending smile. "Are we really giving weight to conspiracy theories from someone who polishes door handles?" Maya's cheeks flushed a deep red, but her voice didn't waver. "You can laugh," she said steadily, "but if he signs that, your company's name will be on every lawsuit that follows." The boardroom was silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a dark cloud. Then, Dwayne's voice, low and decisive, cut through the silence. "Escort her out," he said. Security moved swiftly, but Maya stood tall even as they led her to the door. Just before it shut behind her, she turned back and met Dwayne Johnson's eyes. For the briefest moment, he didn't see the janitor's daughter. He saw a warning, a mirror reflecting a mistake he had almost made. His pen never touched the paper. The next morning, the atmosphere at Hale Investments was not the usual quiet calm, but a tight, unspoken tension that rippled through every hallway. Something had shifted. Maya Williams sat alone in the cold, sterile lobby security office, her small hands folded tightly on her lap, her chin held high despite her heart pounding loud enough to drown out the silence. The marble floors reflected the pale light streaming in from the towering windows behind her. No one spoke to her, no one offered her water or even a word of comfort. Her mother, Denise, sat beside her, shoulders stiff, her face a mask of unreadable emotion. She hadn't said a word since they were both pulled from their night shift and told to wait downstairs. But her eyes, oh, her eyes, spoke volumes of worry and dread. "I'm sorry, Mom," Maya finally whispered, her voice cracking. Denise turned her head slowly, her expression tight and her voice flat. "You should be," she said, not unkindly but with the weary weight of a mother who had fought too many unseen battles. "I clean this building to keep food on the table, not so you can march into boardrooms like you own the place." Maya looked down, her throat tightening. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," she said, her voice barely audible. I read something dangerous, and I couldn't let him sign it." Denise sighed, the breath shaky. "I raised you to be brave, Maya," she said softly, "but I didn't raise you to be reckless." Before Maya could respond, the door to the security office opened sharply. A stern woman from HR entered, clipboard in hand, heels tapping against the tile with an authority that filled the space. She didn't look directly at Maya. "Mrs. Williams," she said curtly, addressing Denise. "You've been placed on leave pending review. We'll call you." Denise's lips tightened into a thin line. Without a word, she stood, pulling Maya gently but firmly by the arm. "Come on," she murmured. Maya's stomach twisted as they stepped out into the cold Chicago air. The towering glass and steel of the building loomed behind them, a silent monument to the place where she had thought she might make a difference. Now, it seemed, she wasn't even allowed inside. Meanwhile, 30 floors above, Dwayne Johnson sat alone in his private office. The unsigned contract lay spread out in front of him like a crime scene. His finger traced the clause Maya had pointed out, sub-paragraph C, line 3. She had been right. The language wasn't just misleading. It was calculated, cleverly buried beneath layers of standard legal phrasing. It was a trap. "How the hell did I miss this?" he muttered, pressing his fingers to his temples. Clara's voice echoed in his mind from the night before. "It's a standard clause, Dwayne. Just trust me." Trust, the word used to mean something. He opened his laptop and began cross-referencing other contracts linked to Derek Vaughan's firm. Legal phrasing, shell companies, offshore structures, it was all too coordinated, too clean. His phone buzzed, jolting him. Clara's name flashed on the screen. He hesitated, then answered. "You didn't sign it, did you?" she asked immediately. her tone tight with an undercurrent of tension. "No," Dwayne replied, his voice flat, distant. "You're overthinking it," Clara said quickly. "We vetted Derek's firm. You're letting that girl get in your head." He was silent for a moment before replying, his voice low. "She saw what none of us did." Clara gave a soft, almost dismissive laugh. "Come on, Dwayne. She's a teenager, the janitor's daughter. Are you really going to question me over a child?" Dwayne didn't respond. Clara's voice softened, but carried a warning. "I'm coming up," she said, and ended the call. Across the city, Maya sat at home, curled on the couch with a mug of cocoa going cold in her hands. Their small apartment felt tighter, the walls pressing in with every passing minute. Denise sat across from her, scrolling through job listings on her phone, her face set with quiet frustration. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Denise sighed, her thumb pausing over the screen. "I regret that you lost faith in grown-ups doing their jobs." Maya didn't argue. Deep inside, though, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had done the right thing. A soft ping interrupted the heavy silence. It was an email from a name she didn't recognize, Robert Barnes. Subject line, "You saw it too." Maya's eyes widened, heart racing. She clicked it open. The message was short but clear. "I used to work. And there, I know what you saw. If you're willing to talk, I'll listen." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, breath shallow. Then, with a surge of determination, she began to type. Because maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. That evening, as shadows stretched long across the skyline, Dwayne Johnson sat alone in his office, the unsigned contract still laid out before him like an accusation. His thoughts spiraled, drawn into the depths of a realization he could no longer ignore. He reopened the safe, his fingers trembling slightly as he pulled out a thick file labeled Hale Internal Barnes Review. He flipped through the pages, old reports, flagged risks, ignored audits, warnings his board had dismissed 2 years ago. There, in red ink scrawled across a page, were the words, "Risk exposure too centralized. If they plant one signature. Trap, we're done." It was signed by Robert Barnes. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closing for a moment as the weight of it all pressed down. Doubt, foreign and unsettling, crept into his thoughts. Clara's voice echoed in his mind from their earlier conversation, dismissive and cool, but now he wasn't so sure. He opened his laptop, scrolling through internal records, cross-referencing contracts with Derek Vaughan's firm. Every line of legal jargon, every offshore structure, every signature now felt like a trap waiting to spring. His phone buzzed again, Clara's name lighting up the screen. He hesitated, then answered. "You didn't sign it, did you?" she asked, her voice brittle with tension. "No," Dwayne said, his voice flat. "You're overthinking this, Dwayne. We vetted Vaughan's firm. You're letting that girl's paranoia get in your head." He remained silent for a moment before replying, his voice low and measured. "She saw what none of us did." Clara let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Come on, Dwayne. She's a teenager, the janitor's daughter. Are you really going to doubt me over a kid?" He said nothing, but deep inside, a crack of doubt widened. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat on the worn couch in her small apartment, a mug of untouched cocoa cooling in her hands. Her mother, Denise, sat opposite her, scrolling through job listings on her phone. The apartment felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were pressing inward. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked softly, her voice barely audible. Denise sighed, her thumb pausing on the screen. "I regret that you lost faith in adults doing their jobs." Maya didn't argue, but deep down, she knew she had done the right thing. A sudden ping broke the heavy silence. Maya glanced at her phone. It was an email from Robert Barnes. The subject line was simple, "You saw it too." Her heart raced as she clicked it open. The message inside was brief but pointed. "I used to work there. I know what you saw. If you're willing to talk, I'll listen." Her hands hovered over the keyboard, hesitation battling with a surge of determination. Slowly, she began to type, her words forming a bridge between isolation and the hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. That evening, Dwayne sat in, the dim glow of his office, the city lights glittering outside his window. He stared at a spreadsheet on his laptop, his jaw tight, the weight of realization settling deeper into his bones. Meanwhile, Clara, across town, descended the grand staircase of their Lakeshore Drive penthouse, dressed in silk navy as if nothing was unraveling beneath her feet. She accepted a cream envelope from the housekeeper with a casual nod. Opening it without hesitation, inside was a photograph of Dwayne, standing with Maya and Victoria Chan, the three of them surrounded by documents marked with red circles. A sticky note was attached. "You're losing control." Her lips tightened as she reached for her phone. The number she dialed answered immediately. "They're coming for us," she whispered. Derek Vaughan's voice, calm and smooth, came through the speaker. "Let them. We don't run. We counterattack." Clara's voice trembled slightly. "You said the papers were buried." Derek's reply was cold and certain. "They were. Someone dug them up. You don't get it, Clara. It's not Dwayne who's leading this. It's the girl." Clara's voice rose, a mix of frustration and disbelief. "She's a child. She's turning this entire tower inside out." There was a pause. Then Derek's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Then maybe it's time we remind the world who holds the real power." That night, Maya sat huddled near the radiator in their cramped apartment, her hands trembling as she flipped through the encrypted files Robert Barnes had sent earlier that day. Tax statements, shell company breakdowns, side-by-side merger language. Comparisons, it was overwhelming. But even as her mind reeled, she saw the pattern. Vaughan's name appeared repeatedly, buried in layers of subsidiaries, cleverly shifting liability away from himself and onto others. One detail hit her like a punch: the nearly identical language Derek Vaughan had used in a merger back in Houston, where the target company collapsed under legal fees within 6 months, while Vaughan walked away richer. Maya's eyes locked on certain terms: indemnification, contingent liability, burden of performance. She didn't know every legal nuance, but she could smell deceit from miles away. "I can't believe he's married to that woman," she muttered under her breath. Denise, scrubbing dishes in the background, let out a humorless snort. "Power marries ambition. It's always been that way." Maya nodded, her thoughts racing. Across the city, Dwayne Johnson wasn't at home. Instead, he sat quietly at the bar inside the private Gold Lounge overlooking downtown Chicago. He wasn't drinking, he was watching. In a secluded booth, half hidden behind frosted glass, Clara sat with Derek Vaughan. Their body language was too familiar, their conversation too intimate. Clara's hand rested lightly on Derek's wrist, her smile carefully controlled, while his expression was easy, relaxed. Dwayne's jaw tightened as he watched Clara lean in, Derek nodding, handing her a small flash drive before gently brushing her hand, a gesture far too personal for mere business. Dwayne turned away, bile rising in his throat. His mind raced. Had Clara always been part of this? Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Maya's phone buzzed. It was a text from Barnes. Look into Clara's spending habits. 3 offshore transfers in her name. Cayman, British Virgin Islands, Zurich. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "She's in on it," she whispered. "She's not just clueless. She's part of it." Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she pulled up public transaction records, her hands trembling. There it was. Clara Hale's name tied to a dormant trust account in the British Virgin Islands. At that very moment, Dwayne received a notification from his bank's internal compliance team. Suspicious access activity detected. Internal transfer. Alert. He clicked on the message. Clara had attempted to authorize a $2.5 million transfer from one of Hale Investments' dormant reserve accounts. The transaction was flagged and stopped just in time. Dwayne sank into his chair, the weight of betrayal pressing down on his shoulders. The noose wasn't tightening around his company. It was tightening inside his own home. Somewhere in the night, 3 people couldn't sleep. Dwayne Johnson, now certain his company was teetering on the edge of disaster. Maya Williams, her fingers gripping the scattered papers of a puzzle too large for any teenager. And Clara Hale, seated beside Derek Vaughan in a black SUV, whispering. "Urgently, he's starting to dig," she hissed. Derek's voice was smooth and cold. "Then we bury him before he reaches the roots." It started with an email. No subject line, no sender name, just a single audio file. Dwayne hesitated before opening it. He had been sitting in his office for hours, long after everyone else had gone home. The silence was thick, oppressive, as though the building itself was holding its breath. He clicked play. Clara's voice came through first, calm and calculating. "He won't question it, not if I push at the right time." Then Derek Vaughan's deep drawl followed. "And if he does, then we remind him what he has to lose." Dwayne replayed the audio 3 times, his stomach churning. The reality sank in like a stone in water. Clara wasn't just complicit, she was orchestrating it. With shaking hands, he forwarded the audio file to his private attorney. Then he sat back, staring at the ceiling. Not with confusion, but with bitter clarity. Clara wasn't just involved, she was leading the entire operation. Maya stood outside the grand bronze doors of the Harold Washington Library, a folder and a flash drive from Robert Barnes clutched tightly in her trembling hands. The bitter Chicago wind nipped at her skin, but her fear ran deeper than the cold. Every document they had pieced together pointed in the same chilling direction. Someone was trying to bury Hale Investments from within, and it wasn't just Vaughan. She stepped inside the library's computer lab, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. Her hands shook as she entered the decryption key Barnes had provided. One by one, the files unlocked, revealing a web of deception. 3 mergers, 3 destroyed companies, all linked to Derek Vaughan, and buried in the metadata, faint traces of Clara Hale's digital approvals. It wasn't just complicity. Clara wasn't a bystander. She was in this, up to her neck. That night, Maya made her way to Barnes's apartment to deliver the physical evidence. But when she arrived, the door stood slightly ajar. Inside, the apartment was eerily silent, devoid of any sign of struggle. No Barnes, no notes, except for one envelope resting on the kitchen table marked M.W. Maya's heart pounded as she tore it open. Inside were 2 things, a small thumb drive and a sticky note. "They know I'm helping you. Don't come back here. Find someone you trust soon." Meanwhile, Dwayne Johnson sat in his car, parked outside an abandoned courthouse on the edge of the loop. He wasn't meeting a judge. He was meeting Victoria Chan, a civil rights attorney known for taking cases no one else dared to touch. She approached quietly, her black wool coat trailing behind her like a silent sentinel. "Mr. Johnson," she said, sliding into the passenger seat, "you've come to the right person. But this isn't just corporate fraud. It's organized financial subversion, possibly racketeering." Dwayne's voice was low and strained. "I need to protect my company, and a girl who saw it before any of us." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "A girl?" 16, he replied. "Maya Williams. She caught it when we didn't." For the first time, Victoria allowed herself a faint, grim smile. "Then she might be our most valuable witness." The next morning, Maya returned to Hale Tower. Security was visibly tighter now. She wasn't on any list, but as she lingered, near the entrance, a familiar face, a junior staffer from the night crew, whispered to her. Mr. Johnson said, "If you ever came back, I should bring you straight up." When Dwayne saw her, the weight of the past few days seemed to lift From his shoulders, he rose from his chair and extended his hand, not as a CEO, but as a man acknowledging a debt he could never fully repay. "I owe you more than an apology," he said quietly. "I owe you the truth." Maya's voice was steady. "Then let's get it out before someone else disappears." They sat side by side in his private conference room, documents and screens scattered around them like a battlefield. Victoria Chan joined them minutes later, nodding at Maya. "This is your war now," she said, "but with the right moves, we win before they even realize it's begun." Maya nodded, nerves taut but steady. For the first time, she wasn't standing alone. Inside Dwayne's office, the walls were no longer adorned with trophies or investment charts. They were plastered with whiteboards covered in timelines, account ledgers, and offshore transfers. At the center of it all sat Maya, her borrowed laptop open, and a folder of secrets at her fingertips. Victoria stood by the window, speaking quietly into her phone, her voice laced with urgency. Dwayne, silent but resolute, pored over the pages, his jaw clenched. When Victoria ended her call, her tone was sharp. "That was my contact at the Justice Department. They're watching Vaughn, but they need more." Maya slid a yellow folder across the table. "This just came in," she said, "from Barnes before he disappeared." Inside were offshore account ledgers, 3 names surfacing like guilty secrets: Clara Hale, Derek Vaughn, and Raven Cross Holdings, a shell corporation registered in Belize. Each transfer a thread of deception, weaving a tapestry of betrayal. Victoria let out a low whistle. "This is more than fraud. It's a long game, predatory, calculated, and it started right under your nose," she said bitterly. That night, on the fire escape of their apartment building, Maya and Denise sat close, wrapped in blankets against the cold. Below, the city hummed with distant music and the occasional honk of a taxi. Denise's hands trembled as she handed Maya a mug of chamomile tea. "They called again," she said softly. "Told me if I don't keep quiet, they'll erase your school records. They said they can make us disappear." Maya's fingers tightened around the mug. "They already tried," she murmured. "You're just a kid," Denise said, her voice cracking. Maya's voice was steady, calm. "It became my fight, the second they used people like us as their cover." For a long moment Denise was silent, then her gaze softened. It wasn't defiance she saw in her daughter's eyes, it was quiet, unshakable purpose. The next day, Dwayne Johnson entered the Grand Hall of the Hale Foundation Gala dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, but his expression was tight, his jaw clenched with determination. This was Clara's event, charity, media, donors. But tonight, Dwayne wasn't here to play the part of the polished CEO. He stepped up to the mic, his voice echoing softly at first, then gaining strength as he spoke. "Before we begin," he said, scanning the glittering crowd, "I want to speak to you not as a CEO, but as a man who's made mistakes." Clara froze where she stood near the champagne table, her fingers tightening around the glass stem. Dwayne continued, his voice steady, no longer a question, but a declaration. "I believed building an empire meant trusting only the numbers, but numbers don't betray you. People do." A murmur rippled through the audience. A few eyes flicked toward Clara. Dwayne's gaze didn't waver. "I've reopened every document our board has ever signed, and what I found, what one brave young woman found, has shaken me to my core." Victoria Chan stood quietly at the back of the room, her arms folded across her chest, her face unreadable. When Dwayne finished speaking, he stepped down from the mic and left the room, leaving whispers and stunned expressions in his wake. Later that night, Maya sat by her bedroom window, the city lights blinking like scattered stars. An open folder of flagged emails lay across her lap, One line from Clara to Derek leapt off the page, slicing through her resolve. He's starting to pull away. You know what to do. As she began copying the information onto a secure drive, the apartment lights flickered. Her laptop screen went black. Her phone vibrated, a single message flashing across the screen. Stop digging or we dig first. Maya's hands trembled, but she didn't close the laptop. Instead, she picked up a black marker and scrawled 3 words on a fresh sheet of paper, not backing down. The following morning, the financial district buzzed with rumors. In elevators and espresso lines, whispers passed from one person to the next. Hale investments under internal review. A whistleblower halting a major merger. Anonymous emails flooding inboxes. Some dismissed it as routine turbulence. Others sensed something bigger, something close to collapse. Inside his office, Dwayne stood by the window. The city skyline sprawled beneath him. I built this company from scratch, he muttered, and I nearly handed it over to a ghost in a tailored suit. Victoria Chan, seated across from him, flipped through a thick evidence file. You didn't hand it over, she said calmly. You hesitated. That's what matters. She set down a page detailing Ravencross Holdings and pointed to Vaughan's signature. But it's no longer just about business, she added quietly. It's about justice. Meanwhile, Clara descended the grand staircase of their penthouse, dressed impeccably, as if her world wasn't unraveling around her. The housekeeper handed her a cream envelope marked with no return address. She opened it without hesitation, revealing a single photograph. Dwayne, standing with Maya and Victoria, heads bent over a pile of documents. Red circles surrounded 3 signatures, hers, Vaughan's, and Ravencross Holdings. A yellow sticky note was attached. You're losing. Control. Clara's fingers tightened around the photo as she reached for her phone. She dialed a number, and Derek Vaughan answered instantly. They're coming for us, she whispered. Derek's voice was calm, almost amused. Let them. We don't run. We counterattack. Clara's voice shook. You said the papers were buried. Derek's tone darkened. They were. Someone dug them up. You don't get it, Clara. It's not Dwayne who's leading this. It's the girl. Clara's voice rose, incredulous. She's a child. She's turning this whole tower inside out. There was a pause. Then Derek's voice, cold and clear. Then maybe it's time we remind the world who holds the real power. The courthouse steps groaned under the weight of flashing cameras and murmuring crowds. Above them, grey clouds loomed heavy over downtown Chicago, but the tension in the air was electric. Inside courtroom 12B, the air was tighter, denser, thick with anticipation. Dwayne Johnson sat stiffly, adjusting his tie as he glanced toward the double wooden doors at the back of the room. Victoria Chan stood at his side, reviewing her notes with a practiced calm. Maya Williams sat 2 rows behind them, her hair neatly braided, her simple attire stark against the courtroom's formality. Her eyes, however, gleamed with a quiet, unwavering fire. This was it, the day everything would come to a head. Across the aisle, Derek Vaughan sat with the confidence of a man who believed money could make anything vanish. Clara Hale, dressed in a slate-grey suit that seemed to shimmer under the overhead. Lights sat beside him. Her face was a mask, her lips pressed into an unreadable line, her gaze fixed on the floor. The judge entered the room, prompting everyone to rise. Silence fell as the proceedings began. Victoria rose with deliberate precision, her voice measured and clear as she presented the case. She painted the story not with dramatic flair, but with facts, contract dates, forged signatures, hidden transfers, and shell companies. Slowly, methodically, she connected every dot, the paper trail of fraud, the offshore accounts, the audio recordings, and the digital fingerprints left behind by Clara and Vaughan. The jurors listened intently, Even Clara, whose composure had seemed unshakable, shifted in her seat. Then came the moment everyone in the courtroom had been waiting for. Victoria turned to the judge, her voice unwavering. "Your Honor, I would like to call Maya Williams to the stand." A hush fell over the room. Reporters scribbled frantically, and camera shutters clicked softly as Maya rose from her seat. She walked forward, not as a frightened child, but with the grace of someone who had faced storms and come through stronger. She placed her hand on the Bible, was sworn in, and sat down. Victoria smiled encouragingly. "Miss Williams, how did you first come to be involved in this matter?" Maya's voice was steady, her words clear. "I was helping my mum on the 27th floor. She's part of the night cleaning staff. I noticed a contract left on the copier, and the signature at the bottom didn't look right. When I read the fine print, it didn't sound right either." Victoria nodded. "And what stood out to you about the contract?" "There was a clause buried deep," Maya said, her gaze unwavering. "It transferred all liability from Vaughan's firm to Mr. Johnson's company. If something went wrong, only one side would take the hit." Victoria leaned in slightly. "Why did you choose to speak up? You were just 16, and no one had asked you to read it." Maya's voice strengthened as she met Clara's eyes, then Vaughan's, then turned to face the jury. Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt." The room froze. Even the judge's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. Clara's hand trembled slightly. Vaughan didn't smile this time. Cross-examination came hard and fast. Vaughan's attorney attempted to rattle Maya with rapid questions. "Miss Williams, do you understand all the legal terms in the contract?" "No, sir," Maya said, her tone calm, "but I understood enough to know when someone's being set up to fail. Do you consider yourself an expert in business law?" "No, sir," she replied without hesitation. "But you don't need a degree to see when someone's hiding something." Her words rang clear and sharp, resonating through the courtroom. The jury's attention shifted. They no longer saw just a girl. They saw strength, resilience, and clarity. After the recess, Dwayne took the stand. Victoria asked a single question. "What made you believe her?" He hesitated, his voice soft but certain. "My gut said she was right, but more than that, I remembered something I had forgotten." "And what was that?" "That integrity doesn't depend on status. Sometimes the janitor's daughter sees the cracks before the board does." Then Clara Hale was called to the stand. The courtroom held its collective breath. Clara sat tall, her voice smooth and practiced, until Victoria played the audio. Recording. "If he does question it, then we remind him what he has to lose." The words echoed through the courtroom, a damning confession. Clara's poise shattered. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said hollowly. "I thought if I pushed the deal through, Dwayne wouldn't have to know." Victoria's voice was sharp. "And when Maya exposed it," Clara's voice cracked. "I wanted her gone because she saw everything I worked so hard to keep hidden." Outside the courthouse, cameras waited, their lenses trained on the exit. Maya slipped through a side door, Dwayne following close behind. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. He met her gaze, his voice steady. "I owed it to you, to be the man you thought I was when you walked into that boardroom." Maya offered a faint smile. "You're getting there." The jury returned just before noon. The heavy silence in the courtroom was punctuated by the creak of chairs and the shifting of tense bodies. Maya sat between Victoria Chan and her mother, her hands gripping the hem of her skirt, her heart pounding like a drum. Dwayne Johnson stood behind them, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Across the aisle, Derek Vaughan wore a faint smirk, but Clara Hale couldn't meet anyone's eyes. She stared at the floor, her hands twisting in her lap. The judge's voice rang clear and steady. "On the count of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, we find the defendants guilty. On the count of falsifying financial documents, guilty. On the count of obstruction and tampering with legal contracts, guilty. Each word struck like a gavel, each verdict a blow to Vaughn and Clara's carefully constructed empire. Derek's smirk vanished as the weight of the decision settled in. Clara closed her eyes, her face pale. The judge didn't hesitate, issuing a swift sentence, 10 years in federal prison for both defendants, with no chance of parole for the first 7. For the first time in days, Maya let out a long, slow breath, her shoulders relaxing as though a heavy burden had finally been lifted. Outside the courthouse, the world had changed. Reporters shouted questions, microphones pressed forward. Maya, how does it feel to be the girl who saved a corporation? Mr. Johnson, will you rebuild Hale Investments? Victoria, what's next for your young witness? Maya answered only one, her voice steady and clear. What do I want people to remember? That truth doesn't depend on your title, and justice doesn't care how clean your shoes are. In the weeks that followed, Hale Investments didn't collapse, it reformed. Dwayne initiated a sweeping restructuring, stripping Clara's name from every board record. Vaughn's assets were frozen, his network of shell companies exposed. Victoria Chan was appointed as Chief Ethics Counsel. Maya Williams was offered a full scholarship, her determination and integrity finally recognized. During a press conference held in the very building where she had once cleaned floors, Dwayne made the announcement himself. Today, we are establishing the Maya Williams Fellowship, he declared. For young minds with vision and courage, Maya didn't just protect this company. She reminded us of who we are supposed to be. Applause filled the room, rising like thunder. Maya stood beside him, her head high, a faint but genuine smile lighting her face. Later that evening, Dwayne sat in his office, now transformed into a hub of integrity and renewed purpose. Maya entered quietly, holding a manila envelope. I got my Columbia acceptance letter, she said, her eyes shining with pride. He smiled warmly. You earned more than that. You've got a seat at any table you want now. She hesitated, then asked softly, Do you regret any of it? Dwayne looked out at the glowing Chicago skyline. I regret that I didn't see it coming, he said thoughtfully. But I don't regret who stood up when I couldn't. Maya nodded, her smile faint but knowing, and she left the envelope on his desk. Across the state, Clara Hale was processed into a federal detention center. She offered no statements, no appeals, only silence. In her concrete cell, she replayed over and over the line that sealed her fate. Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt. The words echoed in her mind, a haunting truth that could no longer be ignored. In a quiet office high above the city, Dwayne placed Maya's envelope on a shelf next to his most treasured awards. Beside it, he placed a simple plaque engraved with words that would define a new era for Hale Investments. Truth isn't loud, but it lasts. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he felt peace. A girl once pointed to a clause and changed everything. Now, from the ashes of deceit, a stronger, more honest foundation had been laid, not by a CEO, but by the one person no one saw coming. In the end, it wasn't the suits, the contracts, or the billions that defined this story. It was the courage of one young woman, Maya Williams, who reminded us all that no matter how big the stakes, no voice is too small to speak the truth. And it wasn't just about saving a company. It was about standing up for every unseen, unheard worker who deserved to be seen. If this story moved you, if it made you rethink what courage truly looks like, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your voice. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like these aren't just headlines. They're calls to action. Until next time, remember, justice has no dress code and truth needs no permission.